So Pat Divilly, author and mind-body expert, you're very, very welcome to the Bulletproof Dad podcast. How are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm delighted to be here. I appreciate you having me on, and looking forward to seeing where we go with it today.
Excellent, man. So look, just for context to listeners, I was at Pat's show a couple of weeks ago. It was a seminar called Base Camp that was specifically for men's work. So a lot about what we're going to talk about today is stuff that Pat would have covered in that workshop. It's absolutely gold. So sit back, enjoy the show here, guys, because you'll really, really enjoy this one. So Pat, I'm conscious, you've obviously wrote a book, you've been on numerous podcasts, you've been on the Late Late Show, which is like the pinnacle for all Irish people. So you have told your story before. I've seen you speak live a couple of times now, but I would love if we were to just touch on that at the beginning. What's kind of led you to this massive moment in your life where you're sitting here on the Bulletproof Dad podcast now, where it's all come to life for you? Can you give us just a little background about yourself, just to get us going?
Yeah, for sure. I think Steve Jobs talks about when you look back, you see the dots connecting. Maybe you don't see it going forward. So it's definitely been the case where if I go way back in time, my earliest memories were being bullied and sort of not fitting in. And I think that informed a lot of how I saw the world and also how I saw myself. And it led me on a path of going into achiever mode, like trying to achieve things in life to fill that void, I suppose, that I felt. I felt like I'm not enough, but if I achieve things in life, I'll come to be enough. The first thing for me was fitness. So when I was in my teens, I started fitness and I started martial arts. And for the first time, I was getting some validation for being good at something. Team sports had always been difficult. And so I valued fitness and I valued martial arts because I put the work in and I got the results. And if I didn't put the work in, I didn't get the results. But back in, I suppose, 2005, 2006, I was finishing school. And at that time, I said, I want to be a fitness guy. But in Ireland at the time, it wasn't really a possibility, I think.
Yeah, it wasn't really,
You could work in a hotel, you work in a hotel gym maybe and get by, but there wasn't any fitness entrepreneurs as such. There was, who was there? There was Paul Byrne.
Yeah, the
Body Burn.
Body Burn, rather. Yeah, he was doing
and
it before
maybe
anyone else was.
Pat Henry or Carl Henry maybe.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was adamant I'm going to be a fitness guy. This is going to be my dream. I went to America for a couple of summers to pursue cage fighting. So back in 2007, 2008, I spent the summers out there. And that reignited my passion for fitness. I saw them doing kettlebells and TRX and all these things that hadn't taken off here yet.
So just for perspective, you actually went and hung out at a gym, like you spent like a J1 summer, was it? Going to where were you in the States?
Two summers. I was in San Diego for 2 summers. So I slept in the gym. I trained 3 times a day. I cleaned the gym 3 times a day. I fight down in Tijuana,
so you were
Mexico.
all in, yeah.
You
fought in Tijuana?
Yeah, I mean, I was delusional. I didn't have any reason to think I could do that, you know.
And that's some experience. Like I've been to Tijuana as a J1er, and that's an experience in itself. So to go down for an MMA fight is pretty impressive.
Yeah, you would bet money on yourself down there, but anyway, I met a mentor out there. I was 18 at the time. I was doing an arts degree. So I coming back a little bit, I suppose. I finished school, wanted to do the fitness thing, but everyone around me was saying there's no career in that. So I did an arts degree. It was kind of like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Study arts. And the one thing that kept me going throughout the arts degree was going to America each summer. I was training with Dominic Cruz, training with a guy called War Machine, some big characters at the time. And I had a mentor called Eric who was 10 years older than me. And he was a kettlebell guy. And he would always tell me, you know, how much potential there was in me. Yeah. And I try to repay the favor and say the same to him because I saw it. But he always struggled with his mental health. And when I came back to Ireland at 19, he took his own life. And that was a wake-up call for me. And I said, right, I'm going to finish the arts degree, but I'm going to pursue the fitness for Eric because he was such an influence. And so I did the fitness thing. I went to England, did a master's in exercise and nutrition science. And then I came to Dublin and I spent 2 years here trying to get a business off the ground. And I just didn't have any contacts. I didn't have any network. I was 22, 23.
Because you're a Galway man in Dublin.
Galway, came to Dublin. And a lot of that was like this old, kind of embarrassing to admit, but it was like, I'm going to leave the small town that I grew up in and I'm going to be a celebrity trainer in Dublin. I'm going to be successful. I'll show them.
All of those notions.
And it's funny because I suppose you look back at your younger self and you realize no one really cared, you know, in the best possible way. No one was looking.
Everyone's worrying about their own stuff.
Yeah. So I spent 2 years trying to get a business off the ground in Dublin, ultimately failed. Came back Christmas Eve, 2011. My dad paid my bus fare home, which kind of broke me a little bit, having to go back to him at 24. And my mum's birthday was Christmas Day. Excuse me. My mum's birthday was Christmas Day. And I remember writing her a card saying, I'll take you out to lunch when things get better because I couldn't afford a gift. And I just felt such a sense of shame. I felt worthless. I was really lost and I really struggled with my mental health. But after a couple of months, my dad pulled me aside and he said, look, half of your problem, half of your depression is the fact that you're stuck in your own head thinking about your problems and you think you're the only one with problems. And he said, if you went out there and you help people in some capacity, you'd pretty quickly get out of your own head. And my mentality was, I can barely help myself. How am I going to help anyone else? But I started offering free fitness plans. So I'd work in a pizza shop during the day. I'd meet people on my split shift, give them a fitness plan, and then I go back to the pizza restaurant. And after about 3 months, a guy emailed me and he said, here's my before and after picture. You didn't ask me for it, but this is my my results. And I put that on social media. And
so
that
you
was
saw the impact you had,
Yeah, and that was the start of it. Like when I shared his pictures, it went like semi-viral down in Galway.
Cool,
and, so anyway, I started teaching fitness classes locally in Barna with 5 people on the local beach. And within a couple of months, there was about 100 people coming to the beach. Within a year, there was 500 coming to my gym. At that stage, I had a gym. And then between 2012 2016, I had 20,000 online clients go through my programs.
Wow, yeah.
So I think it was the first Irish guy doing online fitness at scale.
That's a huge scale, like, as well, yeah.
It was nuts. My life was night and day, I suppose, externally. I was making a lot of money. I'd bought a house and a car,
You'd made it.
Made it, and ticked all the boxes and had my dream profession. But mentally I was struggling, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later, this kind of hypervigilant state where we're switched on and we're going so fast that we struggle to switch off. I was kind of in that state and using alcohol on the weekends to numb myself and to try and calm my anxiety. And at 28, I woke up and it was the first time in my life where I could look around me and there was nothing wrong in my life. There was no bullying. There was no, I wasn't broke. I had friends. I had everything I should want to be happy. And I just felt overwhelmed. I felt lost. I felt hopeless. I felt restless. And I went to a psychologist and she just told me, you need to slow down and you need to reassess. And so I kind of walked away from the fitness thing at its peak and moved more into meditation and breath work, and initially went to study these things for myself to try and help myself. But I think at heart, I'm a teacher and I like to share what I'm learning and I like to share my experiences and my insights. And so the last 5-6 years has been more about mental and emotional wellness, relational wellness. And as you say, now I do the men's work. So I bring men together, which is kind of strange with my background being this fear of men and fear of people.
Well, I just think for people listening there, Pat, like you kind of say that as if that's a normal transition. Like that step you made, like, because I'm in the fitness world and like for me, where you were at, the scale you were working at, like having your own gym. I always remember I actually went to see Gary Vee speak in the Mansion House years ago and you were supporting him. I actually can't remember. It was about, I think it's probably 5-6 years ago at least, maybe even longer.
Oh, yeah.
I actually can't remember anything Gary said because, it was so long ago, there's a lot going on. But one thing 100%, it's still ingrained in my brain, was you were speaking about your own story at the time. And the quote that I loved was, you had that boot camp on the beach and you won best gym in Galway. You didn't even have a gym. It was a beach, like with cones and stuff. And I remember hearing that because I was at the early stages of my gym and I had this thing of going like, I'll do this when I get there, when I do this, when I'll do that. And I was like, this lad did it with it. Like I have a gym. This lad just did it on a beach already. Like what am I kind of waiting? I remember just at the time for where I was at, it had such a big impact on me. And then you're saying that you're training 20,000 clients. Like that's an amazing scale to be at. Like there's some of the best online coaches in the country or even in the world are not even at those numbers. So you were right at the top of the game when you decided that this isn't, I want to change here, which I think is not everybody will be able to do that. So I think like fair play, like, because I think some people will be wrapped up in that so much that they just couldn't walk away. But you obviously seeing, I'm doing well, but there's obviously something more to this. And this is kind of where I'd love to talk about next, because you mentioned there the seminars you do a lot of corporate work we might get into as well. But when I went to your to the Basecamp seminar, the men's work a couple of weeks ago, just to give people a bit of perspective here, it was a room in the Royal Marine Hotel in Dunleary. Beautiful, beautiful spot. Went in, great setup, and it was just all men. There was, how many was there roughly? About
I think it's about 70 that day.
Yeah, there was a great crew in, and this guy's like, I've never experienced anything like it, where like you're sitting down beside strangers and like within half an hour we're closing our eyes, we're meditating together, we're doing breath work, like in a good way. Like again, this sort of stuff, if you weren't there, you can kind of, some of this stuff, mindset stuff, people kind of, particularly men, we can be a bit opposed to it, and some of it can be wishy-washy, but this was genuine. Like sitting down in front of strangers, we were talking about, I think one of the things we had to do was sit in front of someone and say like stuff you're terrified you're going to find out about me, or something we're embarrassed about. I think it was that. And like to do that at the start of the seminar, it wouldn't have happened, but we had built such a relationship across the day that it just felt completely normal. It was an amazing experience. So I'd love to talk about some of the stuff you covered in that workshop, because I think a lot of it stood out for me. And the first thing we kind of talked about at the start of the actual workshop, you got us all down to kind of write our goals of what we want to get out of today. And when we wrote down what we wanted to do, you mentioned this thing called the shadow.
Yeah.
And you said, how can our shadow get in the way today of stopping us from achieving what we want to achieve? So could you maybe explain to everybody listening what the shadow is? Because I think it was part of your process as well with this change that you made being at the top of the fitness game.
Yeah, the shadow, we can think about it that we come into the world 360-degree personalities. So, anyone listening to this that has kids, in the early years, your child will express themselves completely authentically. So they'll cry hysterically for 60 seconds, and then they'll shift into laughing hysterically for 60 seconds. There's no kind of resistance to how they feel. There's no trying to hide how they feel. They run around the place naked. They have no shame. They have no insecurity. But as we get that a little bit older and we start to get socialized, we pick up messages all around us as to who we need to be. So if you grow up in one household where maybe your parents are artists, you see, okay, when I'm creative, I really feel a sense of connection with my parents. And so it's good to be creative. But maybe you grow up in a different household and you got to be a sports star in that house. So we start to learn this is who I need to be loved in the world. I can show this part of myself. I can't show this other part of myself. And this is where a split starts to occur. And we develop the persona. So the persona is like the idea of the mask that we wear to the world.
Okay.
So taking men specifically, some of the messages a lot of us will have taken on are that you got to be hardworking, don't show emotion, boys don't cry, toughen up, man up, all these kind of messages. And so if that's the belief I have about who I need to be, that becomes my persona. And we can think then of the shadow as almost being the opposite. So if part of my persona and the mask that I share to the world is that I'm just a hardworking man, there's a strong possibility that I will then have my laziness or my self-care maybe in the shadow, the opposite trait, the opposite to hardworking. And that's the bit we have a challenge with. That's the bit we have difficulty with, is accepting those parts of ourselves that at some point we were told were not acceptable. So as kids, we're kind of black and white with the thinking. It's good or it's bad. So it's good to be hardworking. It's bad to be lazy. But as we get older, we can start to kind of re-explore these different things and say, wait a second, maybe laziness is useful sometimes. Maybe that's what allows me to recover and then come back and be hardworking. So the shadow is about reclaiming the parts of ourselves that we've pushed away. Again, it might seem fluffy language, but people talk about self-acceptance or self-love. It's easy for us to love ourselves and accept ourselves when we're being proactive and we're being hardworking and we're achieving. But you come up against a challenge where the other stuff comes up, and it will come up at some point. A lot of us put anger in the shadow. A lot of us put sadness in the shadow. A lot of us put joy in the shadow. A lot of men have a hard time expressing their joy.
Big time, yeah.
And the result is, addiction is one thing. Like when these difficult parts of me come up, I go to addictions to numb myself. Projection is another way that we express our shadows. So oftentimes you'll see the things in other people that you struggle to see in yourself.
Yeah.
Like, why am I? The guy came to. Am I allowed to swear on this?
Of course
podcast?
you can.
A guy came to a workshop a while back, and I said, "What brought you here?" And he said, "I woke up the other day, and the first guy I met in the morning was an asshole." And he said, "The next guy I met at the coffee shop was an asshole." And then he said, "I went to work, and the guy was an asshole." And he said, "By midday, I realized I was the commonality in all this. Maybe I'm the asshole."
Yeah,
he said.
the common denominator.
Yeah. So that projection idea is that if you keep meeting the same types of people, one for me that comes up frequently is I meet people that I feel use me. Or come to me when they need something and then disappear. And I can say, oh, well, that's, people are this, that, and the other. Or I could look at it that, oh, maybe there's something in me that needs to wake up and needs to be developed. And it's my assertiveness. I learned early on that I should be passive, I should be easygoing, I should be a people pleaser, I should be relaxed, because that keeps me safe in the world. Like if I do everything you want me to do, I'll feel safe. But if I say, no, that's not okay with me, there's this fear of, oh, people will reject me, people will abandon me, I won't be safe. So everyone I meet that's like challenging who I am, or that whole thing of like people contacting me when they need stuff and then just disappearing. Like I find that hurtful, and I'm like, okay, I need to express myself better. I need to be more assertive. I need to be clear, etc., etc. So ultimately, the shadow is the parts of ourselves that we look to hide or repress or deny. The parts of ourselves we're terrified someone else will find out about us. You see it across the board. I mean, like porn. Shadow is expressed in porn in many ways, that if I'm not willing to tell my partner or what I actually want, maybe I go to do it in the shadowy realms of, where I'm not going to be.
Yeah.
exposed or vulnerable, then
It's nearly safety in a way, isn't it?
Yeah. And I'm big on compassion, and again, compassion sometimes is seen as a fluffy word, but we can beat ourselves up about the fact that we sometimes go to porn, or we sometimes gamble, or we drink, or whatever your thing is. But if you can come at it from a different lens, and you can say, I wonder why I do that. So as you say, okay, I wonder why people are addicted to porn. Well, it gives them a sense of connection without the vulnerability of actually having to connect with a human being, without the fear of being shamed, without the fear of
rejection.
Exactly. Yeah. This is what we're terrified of. This is why we hide these parts of ourselves, because at some point, I learned that it's not. Take an example. A little boy goes to school and dances, and everyone mocks him and shames him. And in that moment, he realizes, I'm not supposed to dance. Yeah. And 30 years later, he's terrified of dancing, I don't know, at his wedding or whatever it might, unless he's got a load of drink on board. If he, I suppose, mans up, for lack of a better term, and goes to a dance class and tries dancing, and someone mocks him at the dance class, that's re-wounding. Like,
bring it all back.
That's
again,
pretty
all
hurtful.
Those emotions, yeah.
However, if you go to something and you do that thing that you're scared of and you're supported, maybe it's a different experience. So hopefully, with the likes of the men's day that we had, you can partner with someone. You say, okay, here's something I don't want you to know about me. Sometimes I watch porn, or whatever it might be. Yeah. And the person doesn't run away, doesn't shame you, doesn't mock you. I think there's healing in that.
There's definitely healing. There's a feeling with it, I don't know what it was. It's in me. I kind of, when I feel stuff, I tend to feel in my gut. And when something feels good, it's just almost like a release of it. You're not even tense, but it's like, if you don't realize you're tense, but then that release comes, you're like, oh shit, that's a nice kind of a bubbly. I don't know what it is, but again, it's a nice feeling internally. And I tend to find most of my stuff in my gut is where I tend to hold stuff. And then like that, when we were doing it the other day, and like that, your heart even elevates up a little bit more and stuff. It's a strange thing. Like, it's the type of thing you'd hear saying, oh, that makes sense. But unless you actually physically do it and be in it, it's a hard thing to describe like that, because you've spent your whole life trying to keep away your vulnerable side and not show any vulnerability, particularly as a man. Like, again, you're coming up from the MMA world. Like, I would have come up playing football and GA, like the team sports. And that's where we got validation, where we got praise, how we made our friends and stuff. So the harder we were, the tougher we were, the more validation, I suppose, we got. So to go and flip this on its head it's a lot for a lot of people. But I think in the right environment and that space you created, it just felt normal. And it's I suppose a safe space was probably the best way to describe it. How I felt anyway. Like, obviously everybody is different going in, but that was the atmosphere I felt. And I think that shadow theory was great to cover at the start, because we all have one.
Yeah, maybe just to come back to your initially you were saying one of the prompts early on was, what's the shadow that's going to get in the way today?
Yeah.
That prompt specifically, and I think this is useful, like, for anyone listening to this that's going on their fitness journey or wanting to improve their relationship with their partner, or whatever it might be. Positive thinking in itself can be awful, because like in the fitness industry, every year we see people join the gym and we say, okay, what's your goal this year? And they say, I want to lose weight. You say, did you try this last year? Yeah. Okay. Did you try the year before? Yeah. And so they tried year after year. And a lot of the time we don't want to look at the quote unquote negative, or don't want to look at what went wrong. We want to say, this year I'm motivated, so it's different this year. But asking, like, what's going to trip me up, is about being realistic about the power of negative thinking. Like, so I believe that we all have these different parts. So anyone listening to this, or myself, or you, or anyone else, we have a part of us that wants to be fit and healthy and strong. We have another part of us that loves being a glutton and loves,
100%.
And so if you can acknowledge and you can ask, like, what's going to get in the way? So that day at the workshop, I said, what's going to get in the way of you having a great workshop? I said, for some people in the room, it's the belief that I know it all already.
100%. Yeah.
For other people, it's the fear of being vulnerable. For others, it's the fear of being shamed, sharing something I'm. And if you can name the part that's going to get in the way. So, like, what's the part that's going to get in the way of your fitness journey? Maybe it's the I'll start on Monday part of you that always pushes it to next week. And if you can name these parts, you're much more aware when they show up.
For me, I actually remember what I wrote down. I think what I had down was something along the lines of, I wanted to listen without judgment and not jump in with advice, because that's kind of my go-to as the fitness guy. People come to me with problems and you're trying to solve problems all the time. I know it's a male stereotype as it is, but particularly for where I'm at, what I'm doing. So going to this place was like, no, I need to, like, leave my PT businessman head to the side, and I'm just going to listen and take it all on board. And like that, there's times where you can feel the jerk reaction kicking in to butt in and say something, and it's like, no, just take a breath and let it pass. And then, as I said, you actually listen, you take so much more on board. It's something so obvious when you say it out loud, but it can be quite tough when you're, without realizing it, you're programmed to these things. And I think the overall word here I would kind of come back to is awareness. So if we're going to try and improve things, we kind of need to be aware of our shadow or our habits, or what our shadow looks like and its characteristics would have. I think that was kind of, for me, the starting point for the rest of the workshop then. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah. Probably my favorite, one of my favorite authors is a guy called Anthony de Mello, who was a Jesuit priest. But when he died, the church didn't know what to do with him because he spent his whole life telling people to look within, kind of thing.
Okay.
But he had a quote, and he says, what you're aware of, you're in control of. And what you're not aware of is in control of you.
Yeah.
What you're aware of, you're in control of. What you're not aware of is in control of you. And what that might look like is, I ask myself, what is it that leads me to over drinking on the weekend? And I just track my week and I say, okay, I think it's when I take on too much and I feel disconnected from my partner because we don't have time to talk. And then there's this frustration in me. And then my release valve is to drink. Okay, now I have an increased awareness. Okay, there's a pattern here. I take on too much, disconnected from my partner, want to release. So now I'm aware of it. So I'm potentially in control of it and I can choose a new response. Maybe a silly example I give is that if you go to the dentist and the dentist does their checkup and they say, oh, you need a filling. Before going, you were not aware of that. Now they've shined light on something. Now you have a choice. Do you get the filling? Do you change your dental hygiene habits? Or do you just keep doing what you were doing before? So things like journaling, conversations with, people that open up new ideas, time with therapists or coaches, reading new books, opening ourselves up to new insights. All of these practices allow us to increase our awareness of things that we're currently doing that are unconscious. In other words, that we recognize our habits, we recognize our patterns, our cycles. So awareness is the first step with change, for sure.
And like with what you said there, we're talking about awareness. I think that summary, the shadow, is going to give a lot of value to a lot of people, because if they get one thing out of this podcast, is maybe some awareness to what the shadow is and what it looks like, will be massive and a big take home. You also then mentioned about, you brushed on it there, about goal setting. And be a lot of people listen to this who set fitness goals. We're into personal development, and then also in business as well. We have goals and we have targets to hit. And something that really struck a chord with me that you mentioned at the seminar was, when we're goal setting, we need to set our goals from a place of worth rather than a place of wounding. Could you elaborate on that for us a little bit more?
Yeah. If you think of, again, maybe, I think there's a lot of dads probably listening. So if you imagine your child, for whatever reason, takes on the belief that they're flawed, there's something wrong with them, they are not enough.
They're not good at football.
Whatever it is.
Simple as that,
genuinely. And there's a bigger context to these things, because we forget that, a kid will take on something, and a child does not have the capacity for context and for finding the gray area. So maybe missing a penalty isn't just missing a penalty. They don't have the capacity to say, oh, I just missed a penalty. And I'll maybe they do. Maybe a child with great confidence does. But they might say, I always mess things up, or I always get it wrong, or I'm a failure, whatever it might be. And so we might think of this as a wound, like emotionally wounded. The child has become wounded. There's a sense of, there's a void, there's something wrong with me. But if I do something outside of myself, I can fix that wound. And so we go on this relentless pursuit then, particularly as men. I'll make loads of money. I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when. And that was my 20s. I'll be happy when I have a business. Okay, I'll be happy when I make twice as much money as I'm making. Okay, I'll be happy when I win some awards. I'll be happy when I buy a house. Happy when I meet a partner. And you kind of run out of road at some stage. And you're like, okay, this isn't working anymore. Worth is to say that, yes, I have flaws. Yes, there's things I need to work on. Yes, I'm an imperfect human being. But I'm a good human. I'm a good man. And so I'm going to choose what I do with my life. I'm not going to be driven by, a lot of us are driven by reactions to how we're going to live. There's the idea of the father wound and how our relationship to our father will have influenced us. And sometimes you see guys that'll say, well, I'm not going to be anything like my father.
Yeah.
And that's not a choice. That's a reaction. I'm going to go the opposite way to what my father did. So I'm just choosing my father, how he is, and I'm doing the opposite. Or I'm going to be just like my father. Those are both reactions. Those are both neither of those are choices.
I get you, yeah.
Neither of those are authentic. Yeah. Your father's behavior can influence like the things you want to express and the things you don't want to express. But saying I won't be like my father is not a choice. It's a reaction. So yeah, a sense of worth is, again, I'm an imperfect human, but I'm a good man at my heart. And I live this one life, and I get to choose how I'm going to live this life. What would I like to do if I believed I was good enough? Okay, I'd like to run a marathon. Cool. That's one of my targets. I'd like to start a family. I'd like to start a business. Not because I think there's something wrong with me and I need to fix myself, but because I think I'm a good man and I think I can choose what I'm going to do with my life. So that's the distinction for me. A lot of our goals and targets typically are based on societal standards. So the guy next to me has a nice car, so I should probably want a nice car as well. Everyone in Hollywood's got a six-pack, so I should probably want that as well. So I kind of think about it sometimes as almost like boy psychology and man psychology. A boy has that sense of insecurity. And so he's got to have other people tell him he's good enough, have other people validate him. But a man has that healthy sense of self. Again, I'm flawed, but I'm a good man. And so I'm going to live a unique expression in life. I'm going to do what's true for me.
Yeah, I think I had a psychotherapist on here in one of our earlier episodes, Bart McEnroe's guy's name. And he spoke about human needs and the kind of hierarchy of needs we have, and like the lower needs, which would be like our primitive brain, you know. So some of us are stuck in there all the time that we can't, like, you know, it's not too dissimilar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the self-actualization and like that. You see, like particularly social media, a lot of it kind of feeds our lower level needs. So you see the business mentor, the fitness mentor. He's a great six-pack. He's selling his online program, but he's not telling you about all the stuff he's taken to look like that. That doesn't get mentioned. There's the flash cars. So like, again, if I buy a Ferrari, it makes me look cool, not because I'm genuinely cool. I'm latching on to the perception of the Ferrari, and that then feeds where I'm at. But again, there's no real genuine substance to it, really, you know. And again, going back to the seminar, we were talking about everything you said there, and there's this quote screaming in my head that you actually had up on the screen, and it really hit home with me. I find I've kind of running a business and trying to do what I'm doing. I'm at a fairly, in comparison to where you're at and what you're doing, the scale you're at. I get, like, you get criticism, you get knockbacks and stuff, and I try to use it as fuel to fuel me up. I can only imagine what it's like at your level. We might talk about that in a few minutes if you're okay to, because I'm sure you probably get reactions from both sides when you get to a certain level. I spoke to Rory Stories on a podcast previously about this, and he did some great insights on it. But you said something about fire, because I find, I'll use that as fire for the belly and stuff. But you said that fire can heat your house, but it can also burn it down. Yeah. So can you just elaborate on that a little bit more? Because that really struck a chord with me. And I think it probably summarizes maybe what you're talking about there.
Yeah, maybe it's similar in the sense of, like, again, what you're aware of, you're in control of. What you're not aware of is in control of you. And as men, we might talk about the archetypes in a while. The archetypes.
Definitely going to get into that. I'm not letting you go without doing that.
Well, the archetypes, just to introduce maybe one of them at least. One of the most common archetypes that we can think of as these energies within us. So we all have these energies within us. We express them in different ways. But one of the archetypes is the warrior. So the warrior is the man that goes out and takes action, gets things done.
Why don't we go into this now? When we do, like, maybe explain all four and then maybe go a little bit deeper in each. Is that okay?
Yeah, for sure.
So there's the warrior, and what are the other three?
Yeah, so if we think about this as kind of a map of the male psyche, so a way of understanding ourselves. So we start with the king. So the king is the part of us that has a sense of vision in our lives. So there's a part of me that has vision, that has structure, that has a sense of being good enough, that has that sense of worth, and so says, okay, my kingdom is myself and my family, my workplace, and my vision for my kingdom is X, Y, and Z. So sense of vision, sense of purpose, sense of being enough. I don't need to compare myself to other people. I don't need to put other people down because I'm just solid in myself. One of the challenges with embodying the king is it's very difficult to see kings when we look out into the world, because a lot of the figures in politics or in media don't express king in a healthy way. They try to hold power over other people. So this is the king: vision, clarity, purpose. Then our warrior works with the king. So the warrior is the part of us that goes and takes action. So my warrior will take action, will set boundaries, will act in service of the king. Then you've got your lover. Your lover is about connection. So feeling our feelings, connecting to our families, connecting to people around us, connecting to nature. And you've got your magician, which is your thinking part. So if you think about the king's got a vision for your life, it's the magician that sits down and kind of maps out, is more strategic based. So in a healthy system, your king has a vision as to where you're going over the next 12 months. Your warrior protects that vision and takes action consistently. Your lover enjoys the journey and kind of adapts to any emotional challenges. And your magician is the planner. That's a healthy system.
And we need all four. We're not just one of the four. We need a whole
we're
awareness of
we're
these
always expressing them. We're just expressing them in different ways.
Okay.
So that's a healthy example. But if we think about the king being offline, so imagine your king hypothetically steps off the throne. Now you've got a warrior who's got no one given direction. So this is the busy man who is always doing and can't switch off, and it's kind of a busy fool.
A lot of people listen to this, myself included, will be a bit guilty of that. Definitely.
Me too. Me too. And I suppose coming back to the fire piece, the fire can heat your house or the fire can burn your house to the ground. For me, that's the idea that if I only have access to my warrior, which a lot of us men do because we were taught that it's good to do things, it's good to achieve things, it's good to be of value, it's good to be a producer. But if I can only access my warrior, and that's all I'm aware of is do, and that's my only way of being, I'm probably going to get burnt out at some stage. I'm probably going to have a sense of disconnection from my family. I often use the example of soldiers in America. There's a high incidence of divorce within those soldiers because they go and they're very much in their warrior, protecting, fighting, getting things done. And then they're expected to step through the doors at home and be a healthy, functioning human being that can hug their kids.
Yeah, one extreme to another, yeah.
So for me, a lot of this men's work and this awareness work is about understanding these different parts of ourselves and developing the weaker parts. So most of us men were not taught how to be a healthy lover in the sense of taught how to feel our feelings.
Taught by a Christian brother in school. Most people listen to this probably were, yeah.
That's the God, yeah. And the one-dimensional aspect will get us so far. Like being a warrior will get you to a certain degree. And that was maybe, being a warrior maybe in past generations was enough.
Yeah,
like
true,
to be a worker. But now there's more expected. Even in intimate relationship, maybe, years ago, there was more solid roles, I guess. Like, it was just different, right? Men were very much one role, females were a different role. And so maybe it was enough then to be a provider and to be an action taker and all this kind of stuff. But now in the modern world where, women are out there doing all the things that men are doing as well, I think for me anyway, I've got to step it up and I've got to be more. I've got to be someone that can be present, someone that can be connected, someone that can hold space for emotions. So that's about developing these different parts. So that's...
I think just to say what you said there is really interesting as well, because I think there's kind of been a set establishment, the old school way, as you said, like the dad is the provider, the mother is present. Obviously, there would have been some exceptions back in the past as well, but in general, that was the rule of thumb. I think our generation now, we're kind of in that period of transition. And I think it can be quite tough where, yes, like this is part of, I talk about on the podcast regularly, is trying to be a provider dad. That's part of a role, but then also trying to be a present dad. And the two, it's kind of, they almost contradict each other. There's a constant kind of clash there. And it's the same for women as well, they nearly have the same expectations that of being the present mother that maybe their parents were, or their mother was, being at home all the time. But then they're also expected to work a full-time job and provide as well. So I think a lot of us probably are caught in that loop at the moment because we're kind of the generation that are trying to transition from one to the other. It's all for the positive, but I think we can often get held back a little bit or trip ourselves up sometimes because we're still maybe attached to the old school. We're not fully there yet. Maybe it's going to take another generation or two before we fully get there. I don't know, but I think this sort of work really helps with that. And because again, a lot of people listening to this will have young kids, and I think that just to bring it back to that from what you're saying and the archetypes, I think there's a huge fit there.
Maybe something practical for the listener is in tribal cultures around the world, when the warriors would go to battle and they would come back to the village, there would be purification rituals, which basically meant the soldiers would come and they'd take off their armor and they'd put it down and they might lie down on the ground in the village. They've done this, they've looked at PTSD rates in soldiers in the States. Within Native American cultures, where they do things like sweat lodges and they do dancing and singing as a tribe, the PTSD rates were really low in the soldiers coming back from war.
Wow, it was like just like cleansing them out of the...
Yeah, it was a purification ritual. So the acknowledgement was, you've gone and you've battled hard and now you're back and we need the man with the heart to come back online. Because you get rid of your heart when you're out in battle. So this has kind of been forgotten about in the modern world. We haven't been taught how to take off our armor. And what that might look like for the person today is that from 9 till 5 or from 8 till 5 or whatever it is in their work day, they have to be in their warrior. They have to be switched on. They have to deliver orders. They have to get things done. They have to hit deadlines. But we haven't been taught how to transition then into the home life and be able to be compassionate and curious and kind and open and loving and playful with your partner and your kids. So it could just be about thinking like, what could your ritual be? It might be a couple of deep breaths in the car. It could be changing out of your work uniform when you get home and putting on some music. And I don't know what it is for you. For me, breath work is a big piece that helps me to transition from one period into another. Like one of the biggest challenges I think we're facing today is kind of what you said there, that like we're expected to wear all these different hats, but also there's no kind of clear distinction between, okay,
Exactly.
work is over now, and now this, and now that, because we're always switched on and plugged
exactly.
in.
Trying to transition from one to the next can be very tough.
So I think we keep talking about awareness, but awareness is, what are the different parts of me? So there's a part of me that takes action, there's a part of me that's playful and connected, there's a part of me that has vision, and then how do I make space to develop these different parts of me? I think that's important.
So on a typical day, just to kind of bring it back to the king, warrior, magician, and lover, we're talking about 9 to 5, the provider versus present dad is all we could possibly call it. So we're talking about being in warrior mode when we're 9 to 5. Just use that as the example for simplicity of this. 9 to 5 is your warrior mode. Then you're trying to transition into lover / magician. Would you be in the evening time in your present mode to be connected with kids, connected with partner, also have a bit of playfulness and fun? Would that be how it would look? And then where does king come in on that then?
Yeah, it could be all very dependent on the job and the role and everything else. On a very simple level, I would think about my king almost sitting down on a Sunday evening and planning the week alongside the magician. So that's my vision for the week. And then my magician actually, like, if my vision for the week is to have 5 workouts, that's my king. And it might be then my magician that actually plugs those into the calendar to have a strategy and a plan. Throughout the day, again, I might get up in the morning, do a little meditation, or I go for a walk and a bit of headspace before going to work. That could be my king or my magician, sort of nourishing myself first. Warrior, I'll be in warrior a lot throughout the day, and magician. So I'll be making, depending on my work, I'll be making plans, going into detail-orientated things. I'll be getting things done. And then hopefully, transitioning into lover in the evening where there's an ability to be present, to kind of leave that stuff behind. The archetype is a big piece, but maybe just to share, we talk about shadow. So for the warrior, the gold or the really useful part of being in your warrior is you're decisive and you get things done. But the shadow, the part to kind of watch that might trip you up, is your impatience. There's a sense of, I'm switched on, I'm getting things done. Why is everyone not working at this pace? And there's a lack of empathy, lack of compassion. So that's the thing to just keep an eye on. I fall into that sometimes. Like, I'm really excited, I'm getting things done, I'm smashing through things. But then a friend rings me and says they're struggling, and I just don't have time for that.
You're on a different planet. Yeah.
So that's the warrior. Then the lover. The gold for the lover, the piece that's really nice is that they connect really well. So they've got compassion, they've got empathy, they connect really well. The shadow for the lover is they struggle to put boundaries in place. They struggle to say no because they don't want to lose that connection. So that could be, you love connecting with your partner and they've done something to piss you off, but you're going to keep your mouth quiet and you're not going to say anything because you don't want to risk rupturing the relationship. So developing our lover, those kind of two work together. Like our warrior and our lover work together. Some men are too much in their warrior and they don't tap into their feelings. Other men become very emotional and lose their ability to communicate clearly. So,
like the stereotype that comes to mind there is like the successful businessman who has loads of money, but then can't switch off, and like that marriage has gone to crap, doesn't see the kids, and like it's a stereotype that we see a lot of, you know. And it's I think this is a great summary of kind of seeing how that can happen, because that approach can bring you, that warrior approach is that can give you so much success in so many areas, but can also come at a huge cost if you can't switch out of it. And I think maybe a lot of lads listening to this will hugely relate to that. So I think it's a really powerful piece. You also mentioned there as well briefly about if a friend was to contact you and maybe was in a bad place. We also spoke about something again, going back, guys, anyone who's tempted to go on this base camp, you really should. Again, everything we're talking about here is covered in it in way more depth. But we spoke about I called it the traffic light system, but it's called the polyvagal theory is the official name. So for people listening to this, just to give a bit of context, it was like, for I suppose our emotional states, are we in the green, are we in the amber, or are we in the red? Again, I'd like you to maybe, if you're able to, just give us a bit of an introduction on that and the kind of logic behind each, the green zone, the amber zone, and the red zone.
Sure. So this is the idea that our nervous system and the health of our nervous system is really important in terms of being social, being connected, being open, being consistent, all of the things that we need to create positive change and to feel safe and settled in the world and in our work and in our relationships live within the nervous system. So you can think about your nervous system or your autonomic nervous system as being a conversation between your body and your mind. So we're sat here recording a podcast. If there's a smell of smoke in the environment, through the senses, my nervous system's going to pick up on, okay, there's potential danger here. And so my body will respond. I might notice my heart rate gets faster, my breath gets faster, my muscles tense so that I can run away. And so my body is constantly responding to what's happening within my environment. So that's one example, a smell of smoke. Another example, I come home from the office, I've had a really successful day, I'm switched on, and my partner says, why didn't you unload the dishwasher before you left the house? And suddenly I feel threatened in some capacity. So effectively, anytime we experience a sense of threat or a sense of danger, our system responds. So when I'm comfortable and I'm safe, if someone's listening to this and they're out for a walk and they've had, they're on top of things in life and everything is good, they might consider themselves being in a green zone. I'm safe, I'm connected, it's safe to be in the world, it's safe to connect with other people, all is well. I can think about my goals, I can think about my future, I can think about what I want for my life. If someone listening to this has not slept well last night and it got stuck in traffic and is currently running late to work, they may notice they feel different in their body. There's more tension, there's speed, like the heart rate's faster, the breath is faster. This is the body picking up on a sense of there's danger within my environment. And now I can't think about my goals, I can't think about the future. I'm more reactionary here because my body is picking up on the idea that I'm in danger. Even if there's no actual physical danger, our bodies respond in the same way as they would if we were threatened. And if we spend a long time in that orange state, that fight or flight state, eventually, because it's an exhausting place to be, we'll find ourselves dropping into a red state, which we might think of as burnout or exhaustion. So that's kind of your starting green, everything's good, staying on top of things. You shift into orange, there's a level of stress, fight or flight energy, things are speeding up, and then red is burnout. Now, a healthy system will move between those different states depending on what's needed, like a car that shifts gears. Sometimes I want to be in green, sometimes I want to be orange.
I think that's a great point, because I remember looking at it first, you kind of naturally say, oh, I need to be in green all the time. But if you think about it, if you're in green all the time, say you're trying to run a business and stuff like that, like it's not going to go very well for you, like, because you're going to get walked all over and you're not going to see, like you need, there is times where amber does serve you quite well. But again, I suppose it's coming back to that. I would think maybe as some sort of relation, my own assumption from what we're talking about there, the warrior might do well in the amber zone, whereas like that, the lover, for example, probably is much better in the green zone, or the magician for thinking clearly. Would that be a fair assumption, or do they intertwine a bit more?
Yeah, well, we probably, just to add the green, orange and red, we can be in multiple states at once. And what we actually want is we want the green online. So we want the green, that's our like decision making. That's the healthy functioning human in us. And so if my green is online, if I'm feeling safe and social, I can say, I'm going to go to the gym now. And me going to the gym requires me tapping into that orange energy, some more of that energy, but I'm choosing that as opposed to me walking out in the street here in Swords and someone threatening me and coming up to me, then I'll lose access to my green. I don't feel safe. I don't feel social. Now I'm just in orange. So I've lost that capacity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get you, yeah.
So we want to be keeping green online. Yeah. Where it becomes an issue is when stress starts to build in our lives, when we have a couple of nights of poor sleep, there's a lot of expectation on us. We feel a bit reactionary. We're catching our tail. We're kind of, we're on a treadmill where we're just struggling to get things going. And life feels like an uphill battle. This is where we lose access to green. And suddenly I'm just, it's a little bit, I guess, like the warrior running things, but the king has left the building.
Yeah.
So there's no sense of direction to what I'm doing. And you might find if you don't have clarity in your life as to where you're going, you might find you either create chaos in your life. So it's like you're almost looking for problems to solve. It's like your warrior almost wants something to do, so you're fucking things up on purpose. Yeah. Or you might find yourself getting snappy and reactive with people around you because your warrior's got that energy and they just want to express it. So again, coming back to the compassion piece, if you notice that you're reactive and you're snappy and you're being a bit hostile with your kids or whatever it might be, you might just recognize that, okay, my warrior is running the ship here. My king needs to come back online. I need to sit down for half an hour. I need to get clear on where I'm going in the next couple of weeks. I need to, get support, whatever it might be. So
again, it's coming back to awareness, and I think it's a great system. It kind of gives you a kind of context to work within, because like that, when you're stuck in the amber, but particularly if you're stuck in the red, it can be very hard to get that clarity. Like we might actually talk a little bit more about the red, what that looks like. Because again, sometimes I'm sure some of us can be there for 10 minutes some days, or some of us could be stuck there for weeks and years.
Yeah, so maybe just an alternate way of thinking about it is that, as humans, we think of ourselves as being very different to animals, but the stress response in humans is the same or very similar to animals. So if you've got an animal relaxed in their environment out in the desert, not the desert, where do animals chill out in safari? You see,
Safari or the jungle, let's say.
the jungle.
Not in swords, anyway.
Not in swords. So you got an animal that's feeling relaxed and comfortable. It's in the green zone. And so in that place, it can digest its food, it can reproduce, it can play, it can sleep, it can rest, it can recover. Everything's safe. It can do all these things. If a threat comes into their environment, they quickly shift into orange and they go into a fight or flight energy. So fight energy is if I'm bigger than the threat in front of me, I'll fight. If I'm smaller than the threat in front of me, I'll run away. So that's orange energy, big rush of energy to keep the animal safe. Now that just lasts for a couple of minutes and then the animal shifts back into green or it dies, one of the two. So the response within the body is actually there to keep it safe. Yeah. If the animal gets surrounded by threats, so if there's a zebra out in the wild and 10 lions surround the zebra is going to play dead. It's going to collapse. It's going to go into what we call the red zone. Yeah. So it's a self-preservation. There's a story about a plane going down in America and it was going to crash land. And they got an emergency landing and CNN asked the lady on the plane, how did you feel when the plane was going down? And she laughed and she said, I felt nothing, I passed out. So that's an example of
a coping strategy.
Yeah, your system saying, oh, this is completely overwhelming. The safest bet for me is to pass out here and reserve my energy as best I can. We might not pass out, but for us, the red zone could be that we find ourselves hiding from the world. We find ourselves isolating and not wanting to talk to anyone. We find ourselves procrastinating on things that really need to happen. We find ourselves in a kind of freeze. We call it a freeze state where I really struggle to make decisions because I'm afraid of making the wrong decision. There's a lack of decisiveness. There's a lack of social engagement. These are some of the signs of being in the red zone, the burnout state. And when we find ourselves in the red zone, so if we were to think about a couple of states, green, safe, social, connected, I like talking to people, I feel capable of doing things in the world. Orange, a little bit more impatient, I don't really want to be around people, I just need to get my things done. I feel a little bit stressed, feel anxious, feel panicky. And then red zone, I'm terrified of people, I just want to be on my own, I just want to, it's all too much for me. So again, if we notice how it feels for us, because we're all different, the example I sometimes give is that if a dog comes in the room, for some people it puts them in green. They feel very safe with a dog. For others that have been attacked by a dog in the past, it's going to put them straight into orange or red, So we need to understand what these states look like for us. But a key distinction, for red, we mentioned red there. With red, typically there's a sense of frozen, being frozen in time.
You're in freeze mode as opposed to fight or flight.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like there's a hopelessness, there's a powerlessness, there's a sense of shame, there's a sense of isolation, wanting to hide ourselves in the world. The key tools for that place is you're not going to feel like reaching out to a friend and connecting with someone, but you need to reach out to a friend and connect with someone because generally we need someone else's support to get us out of that red place.
And just with support, like say for example, I'm in that red zone, I'm struggling for a while. I have a friend who I'm quite close with who's going really well. He's from looking at him, he's dominating in his business. He's doing really well with business. He's keeping himself fit. He's keeping himself active. He kind of has the highlight reel that I want, right? And I'm say to reach out to this friend, and he's kind of, maybe he's in full on warrior mode most of the time, and it's serving him well. He's in that kind of amber most of the time because it serves him for business and stuff like that. If I ring him and I'm in that red place and I need help, I'm sure his natural reaction is going to be as an operator, is to kind of go, come on, man, you need to snap out of that. Come on, you need to get yourself up. You don't have time for this, which meaning well, but that's probably not the best way to go, is it? Like I'd imagine if I'm stuck in the red, I don't need a voice as such. Like what is it I need? If I'm to flip it around, say a friend of mine's in the red and they're looking for help, what's the best way to help someone out who's in the red?
Yeah, just like what you said there, what seems like an invitation can feel like a threat when you're in the red. So if you come to me and I'm really struggling and you say to me, hey, let's go get a workout in together, that can seem like you're trying to help. But sometimes it can feel a little bit overwhelming because you need to think of this person as just really, one way I think about it is green is the healthy adult, orange is the reactive teenager, and red is like a hopeless child who's just terrified. And so how do you support that person? I think you start by, one is you ask questions rather than making statements. So don't tell people what to do. Just really get curious, ask questions, make invitations. So I would often ask people, I think a key piece, this would be good for like if your partner's challenged with anything or they're stressed or your kids, whoever it might be. a simple phrase that's really helped me over the last couple of years, because my tendency was to try and fix or to change or to.
I'm guilty of it all the time. I said that was the goal I wrote at your seminar at the
Yeah.
start. The first thing I put down.
And again, it's really common because for men, we learned that to be of value, you have to add something to the conversation. And so we become the fixers, and we sometimes take pride in that. That's the kind of standard example that's often given is partner comes with a challenge. We go straight to problem solving mode. Okay, you should do this. They feel like they haven't been heard or appreciated. They feel like we're being robots that are just trying to change them. We feel like we feel kind of shame because, like, for me at least, I'm like, fuck, I did it wrong.
Yeah.
That's the voice that comes
You're
in.
trying
for
to
me.
help and you do the complete opposite. Yeah.
Yeah. So the magic phrase that I find really useful is just to ask, can I share something? Or is it okay if I share something that's helped me? And what that does for someone who's, again, if you're in red and you're kind of shut down, feeling a bit hopeless, when you ask someone, can I share something with you? And they get the chance to say yes or no.
So you're asking the person in the red, can I share something with you?
Yeah. Would you be open to me sharing something? Or could I share something that helped for me? And don't take it personal if they say no, because they're actually getting some power in that, because it might be the first time in a while they've made a decision.
Yeah.
It's kind of a different angle. But I remember I did a suicide prevention training years ago. And something that struck me was they talked about how, sometimes when someone takes their life, the week before taking their life, the people around them are surprised because they say he was in such good form before he the last couple of days he was just the happiest we'd ever seen him, or happiest we'd seen him in a while. And they said usually that was because the person had made a decision and it was the first time in a while they had a sense of certainty, a sense of control, and that kind of struck me. But I guess in a different lens, but kind of a similar idea. If we ask someone, can I share something with you? And they get to say no. I'd prefer if you didn't. That gives them a bit of control. Or if they say yes, then it's not. Then when I say, when I was struggling recently, something I did was X, it's not me trying to fix them or change them or whatever. It's a subtlety, but it makes a big difference, I think.
So you're telling them a story about yourself as opposed to telling them what they should do. So you get to ideally get permission and then say.
Personally, that's what I try to do.
Yeah. No, I see that. I think I see the logic and the approach there, definitely. Yeah.
There's a guy, Joe Dispenza, who's quite famous, and he says something like, I think he says, be the teaching, not the teacher, or something, which basically means demonstrate through your own life experience rather than lecturing or. But look, it's not easy. And if you find yourself in the red, I think the key is to, don't believe your stories when you're in those places. I think your stories are temporary. Your body, as far as your body is concerned, you're in threat. One of the ways, what you need to do is create safety. And how you create safety is you engage socially. Red is like a turtle that crawls up into its shell and hides from the world and goes very slow. So gentle movement, like going for a walk, getting out in nature. These things sound very obvious and very basic, but it makes a huge difference. Because the biggest challenge, the biggest piece with mental health that I think is starting to come through is mental health is not all in the mind. When you're in red, you can't outthink your way out of that because your body just perceives you're in massive danger. When you're in orange, you can't outthink your way out of anxiety. You can't think your way out of depression. You've got to come into the body and create safety. So you do that through social engagement. You do that through deep breaths. You do that through gentle movement. You do that maybe through not so gentle movement. If you're in the orange state and you're very aggravated, it could be punching the punch bag for half an hour. But
they're the techniques, because I think this is something that always drew me to you, Pat, was that you didn't just talk about mindset stuff and that was it. You were all about actual usable techniques and usable tactics that can actually help you transition. So again, I think to give perspective, I love that the 4 archetypes, because we're trying to transition from warrior into lover in the evening time, for example. I think everybody can relate with that. What you mentioned there, you sometimes do breath work. So for someone trying to do that, or maybe it's someone who's been stuck in amber all day trying to go to green, again, similar to what we're talking about with the archetypes. The breath work is one thing. Again, getting out in nature, you said there. Is there any other ones? We did something at the seminar I'd never done before, which was the shaking, which was essentially all of us standing up, closing our eyes and jumping up and down and kind of making these. I'd say if some hotel staff person walked in to the wrong room and walked in, they would have been freaked out as to what they seen. Yeah. But it was an amazing experience. And something I actually thought what it was is this would be an amazing thing to do with a sports team before, getting in the zone before a game. I just thought something was cool, because I remember doing it, and I was actually Dan, our producer, who's listening here, was sitting beside me, and I told Dan straight after, the whole time I had a voice in my head saying, "Open your eyes. You're the only gobshite doing this. Everyone's just standing around looking at you, laughing." And because you're doing this thing, and I didn't, and I didn't listen to the voice. That was obviously the shadow of some degree getting at me. And I said it to Dan, and he laughed. And he said, "Yeah, I had the exact same thought as well." You know, and it was just an interesting one. But again, the shaking is another thing. But is there any other ones like meditation? You're obviously quite big on as well. Like,
well, you actually referenced it earlier without probably even realizing when we talked about sharing something you don't want someone else to know about you. My friend Jen Healy, who's been in here actually in the studio, talks about how our secrets make us sick. So the stuff that we hide. But you mentioned how when you shared something you hadn't shared before, or something that felt a little bit edgy for you, you felt release in your tummy. So alongside mental health and the mind, our body is holding all of our experiences. So when I try to hide an emotion or hide a part of myself, I will tense down, I'll clamp down. So the shaking exercise, as you mentioned, is just the qigong exercise, really. It's literally just bouncing up through the legs and bringing some movement, gentle movement back into the body. And it can like unblock, it can just create a bit of a sense of freedom, a sense of openness. Everyone needs to come up with their own toolbox effectively. I think that's a key piece.
That's where I wanted to get to really. So like if someone's stuck in the red a while, is the logical place maybe to start with the likes of breath work and nature? Do you find there simpler areas for people, or is it really just down to the person themselves?
It's down to the individual, but 5 kind of, I guess, go-tos, and these will not be new to anyone, but maybe just through a different lens if we think about how it's affecting the body. The first is the connection, so getting connection with other people. So I say when a fire alarm goes off in a building, before the fight or flight response or before we go into a freeze response, the first thing we do is we look in each other's eyes to figure out, am I safe or am I in danger? So that speaks to the importance of connection. So who do you turn to? And you might have certain people in your life you don't turn to when you're in that kind of shutdown state. I've got certain people in my life that I love them to bits, but if I tell them that I'm struggling, they're just going to go into problem solving mode, and it doesn't feel good. Yeah. So connection is one. And that might be, you might need professional help. You might need a coach or a therapist or a counselor or a men's group. That's the power of a men's group, I think. Doesn't have to be my men's group, but any men's group. So connection, nature gets us out, and it slows things down. Like I really think nature and a walk with a friend will fix a lot of things.
Solve all the world's problems, really, don't you? Yeah.
And it just slows down the stimulation of like how much noise we're taking in and stuff. It takes you out of the box that you're in. We're literally in boxes most of the time, so it kind of opens up.
There's something for men as well, being side by side, I think works quite well as opposed to front on.
Exactly. On that, doing things with your hands. So like the men's sheds around the country for older men, they often do projects like woodwork projects or whatever it might be. Really, it's just an excuse to bring men together. But sometimes the act of doing things together, which is probably something we've lost over the last couple of decades. There's less manual labor, less of that stuff going on.
Honestly, like if you were to delve deep into what I do with Bulletproof Dad in the gym, it's all guys getting together and doing physical work together. It is essentially that. Like it's a form of a men's shed to a degree. The guys are coming in and training together, and like they come to get results and to get fit, but they all stay because of the connections they make with other people. And I think everyone comes for physical results, but they don't realize it until they're in it, the impact it has on their mental health, that outlet. And it's not just the exercise is obviously part of it, but it's the connection is huge. And I think you mentioned it yourself when you were running the gym. It was the biggest thing you've seen as well, was the community, that aspect of what you're doing is huge.
Yeah. I think I mentioned maybe at the seminar a couple of weeks ago that some of my closest friends over the last couple of years that I've connected with have come out of 12-step. And I haven't been in 12-step groups, but people from AA, from Al-Anon, from the different 12-step recovery programs, I've just gotten really close with a lot of people. I was like, what's the commonality here? I think that the commonality is how clearly these people communicate that have gone through 12-step programs. And what you're doing there is you're a couple of times a week or once a week, you're sitting in a circle, you're sharing what's going on for you. And no one's fixing anyone, no one's trying to change anyone. So that was just kind of an interesting note for me. But in terms of tools, so we've got connection. Have a list of people that you can connect to, either professionals or people in your own life when you're struggling. The second is getting out in nature. The third is cold water. Cold water can be a splash of cold water in your face, or it can be a cold shower. That can be really useful. Elicits the diver's response, which can kind of just create a sense of safety to some degree, slow things down. That can be good if we're anxious as well, the cold water.
It is quite linked with breath work as well, isn't it? The two tend to come hand in hand if you're going to do a cold water submersion.
Yeah, breath will be 4. Yeah. The key with the breath, there's different styles. You think about the breath almost like a remote control, that when you're anxious, your breath tends to be shallow, fast, through the mouth, into your chest. When you're relaxed, your breath tends to be slow, through the nose, into the belly, and deep. And so if people remember the acronym LSD, low, slow, and deep. So LSD breathing, low, slow, and deep. So oftentimes when people are told take a deep breath when they're stressed, they'll go, and the breath barely gets to their sternum, you know? So a deep breath is actually a slow and low breath in through the nose. So people might just consider, if you are feeling stressed, just slowing it down. You can breathe in through your nose for 5 seconds and out for 5. That's called a coherence breath. Okay. Really simple. Yeah. But on average, we breathe 12 to 16 times per minute. Coherence breath brings you down to 6 breaths per minute. Okay, yeah. So do that for 2 to 3 minutes and I'd be amazed if you don't notice a change. So breath, connection, nature, cold water, and movement then is the other one that's really useful. Movement.
As you said, it's simple. Could be stretching in the house, going for a walk. It doesn't have to be the big dog workout. But again, there's no right or wrong. It's kind of what really ever suits you. Yeah.
Yeah. Other things people find you can think about. You'll find connection through your body, so that's movement, breaths, etc. You'll find connection through other people, and you'll also find connection within your environment. So that can be candles, incense, it can be a certain type of music you like, but using the senses. One that can be useful actually is sound. That could be shouting or roaring or humming or
Would listening to music fall in there as well? I suppose it depends on the music. Like certain bands you maybe want to avoid if you're not feeling great. There's a scene in Father Ted coming to my head right now. There's a Radiohead song coming on for Tommy Tiernan. Who's in great form, and then Radiohead comes on the radio.
Well, this is like a bit of a stretch. Again, I don't know if I talked about this in Dublin, but I mentor a young guy in Galway, and he's had a lot of trouble over the years. And he once told me that he had beaten up a punch bag for 2 hours. And afterward, he said to me, the reason I did it was because I recognized that if I've got anger and I don't express the anger, it just sits in my body or it gets blown up on the wrong person. Yeah. So it might seem a bit wild, but sometimes I would set it up that I have a space for expressing anger, and that could be put on some Rage Against the Machine. Yeah. Put out some pillows, do some deep breathing, and then just beat the crap out of the pillows or the thing. And it's like all emotion, we're supposed to feel these things. We're not supposed
to express than suppress. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. The more you push that stuff down, I mean,
a great analogy I got before is like it's like a beach ball in a swimming pool, and you can push it and push it and push it, but eventually you're going to lose the strength. And as soon as you lose the strength, it's going to come up and smack you in the face. Yeah. And it's kind of just a good little summary of it. Pat, this has been absolutely fascinating. Like there's so much in there already, and I'm kind of conscious. There's like, again, you spoke about there, the toolbox. There's a lot of stuff there people can work with already, and I think if one take home people get from today is maybe a heightened awareness to some things that are going on right now, that can maybe help them start the conversation with themselves of maybe where they need to go next. And as you said, that could be going to the likes of the men's workshops, or maybe it is going to a counsellor, a therapist, whatever that might be, or simply going to a gym, depending where that person is at. With yourself, Pat, you obviously do a lot yourself. Like you're an author. You've been on the Late Late, which is the ultimate for any Irish person. But like, if people were to find out more about you, whether it's the workshops you do yourself, because obviously you do them for women as well. There's women that listen to the podcast, so they might be interested in that. And then also you do a lot of corporate work as well. So maybe could you talk us about the workshops first, and then maybe some of the corporate stuff you do, because there'll be a lot of business people listen to this as well who might be keen to get you in.
Cool. Thank you. I've been doing workshops for probably 8 years. So when I stepped away from the fitness stuff, it's funny, like from the outside looking in, it's like, oh, he went from fitness into speaking. But in reality, it felt like I went from fitness into the void of not knowing what I was going to do next. But
that was a huge step, honestly, for someone who's in the... I have huge appreciation for where you had gotten yourself to in the industry I'm in, and I think to step away from it is no small feat. Like,
thank you. I started doing the corporate stuff a couple of years ago. Started doing public workshops. The men's stuff has only been the last couple of years, and really I'm leaning now toward the men's stuff more so with the public workshops. I do a mixed workshop called Fit Mind, which is kind of a full day experience. We look at mental health, relational health, emotional health. And then my corporate stuff, I try to push the edges and push the boundaries a little bit in terms of what's being delivered in there. So similar stuff like, how do we communicate more effectively? How do we learn to navigate our emotions? I'm a little bit, I don't care about the company as much as I care about the people in the room. So
exactly. It's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
That's where I'm at. Sometimes people are like, how can you justify working for these multi-tech companies and they're running staff into the ground? I just want to go in and offer some practical tools, and some people will be into it, other people won't. But yeah, that's my That's my ambition. So yeah, a lot of mostly corporate work actually at the moment. So
Cool. And with the men's work, like you see you're being pulled towards that a little bit more.
Mm.
What's kind of the draw there? Obviously, you're a man,
Mm.
but what is maybe the pull there? Do you feel like guys are struggling right now in general? Do you
yeah,
you feel we're a bit lost, maybe?
Personally, over the years, I've just tried to create the things that I need or needed. And, I've spent 10 years now studying meditation, breath work, different forms of communication, all these different things. So I have this like massive toolbox, and if you come to a 1-day workshop with me, I can give some ideas, but I need people with me for a couple of months on a consistent basis. So,
and you do those programs as well, don't you?
Yeah, I'm just starting a new program called the Masculine Leadership Program in June. So that'll be a 10-week program, and really about practicing in the same way we practice fitness, and we like have weekly sessions and you get your reps in. It's kind of the same thing. We'll get our reps in. But the draw for me, I think for good or for bad, men can be a source of a lot of destruction in the world. Again, not because men are bad people, but because if we've been taught to suppress emotion and not feel our emotions and not relate to our emotions and not have anyone to turn to and to be stoic and to just get on with it and just to work, all this kind of stuff leads to shadowy behaviors, leads to things that hurt people. That's effectively hurt people. So it's if and also healed people heal people. So similar to what you're doing with the lads in the gym, it's like if you create a safe space where people can come, show a bit more of their authentic selves, that creates a culture. And so that's my goal, is just to create a culture of change that, it's humbling for me that we do these workshops and you got guys twice my age coming in and being open to it. You got guys that are super young coming in.
There's such a mix of that. It was brilliant. I thought, like, in my head, I thought it was just going to be loads of like fitness guys, and I was so happy to see that it wasn't. There was a guy sitting there, so I think he owned a construction company, and there was a guy fitting kitchen. It was a real mix. And what really struck me was I obviously went with Dan, so I had my comfort blanket of someone with me.
Sure.
But most of the guys there had just gone on their own. Like, they just went up and shot up themselves, which I just thought was really cool and really top class.
I like when guys get sent by their... I don't like when guys get sent by their partners, but I like when those guys leave and they're like, that was
worthwhile.
Yeah. Because I can see how it would be triggering if someone was to send you, because I certainly don't have all the answers. Go to Pat, he'll fix you. It's like, no.
I kind of get the same sometimes where like a partner might reach out to me on the phone for joining the gym for her husband, and usually along the lines like, my husband's sitting on his arse for ages, he needs a kick out the hole. It's like, that's great, but I need to speak to him first. I can't get this disgruntled man coming down to the gym that doesn't want to be here. You have to be coachable, and it's exactly the same for yourself. So Pat, look, this was an absolute pleasure today. I really appreciate your time. If people want to find out more on the courses or on the corporate work, where's the best place to find you?
PatDivilly.com is my own website, and then I've got MasculineLeadershipProgram.com is for that men's course that I mentioned. So that's the end of June that will start. And on social media then, where's the best place to find you? At Pat Divilly on Instagram and LinkedIn, and I have a podcast also, but I haven't been recording. Busy doing everybody else's. You've been invited on so many. Look, Pat, absolute pleasure chatting to you today. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.